Welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics on an extremely eventful week for an off-session interim week leading into veto session. I want to jump right into it this week. We're very excited to have Senator Will Kraus from the Jackson County area, also running for Secretary of State in 2016 on the Republican ticket. Senator, welcome to This Week in Missouri Politics.
Scott, glad to be here.
I want to talk about the campaign, but first I want to talk about the biggest issue that was hit Jeff City this week, the Sanctity of Life Committee, formed by former Pro Tem Senator Dempsey, led by Senator Schaefer, who's also running on the statewide ticket with you, looking into some of the videos with Planned Parenthood and some of the issues surrounding a new facility in Columbia, that it came out this week at a huge, salacious revelation, really by your committee, that there's a tie to the University of Missouri. Can you tell us what happened in the committee this week?
The university had emails basically trying to recruit an abortion doctor to that clinic to go on and perform actual abortions. They haven't been doing abortions for a number of years, but there's emails from people actually recruiting on their state-funded email system, recruiting Dr. Nicholson to Columbia to perform abortions.
So it was a lengthy testimony. The chancellor came in, wasn't the president, it was the chancellor of the EMU campus in Columbia, came in and testified at length. It looked like the entire committee was on go. It looked like this was an issue that will not be going away anytime soon.
No, I think that the committee, we are a number of pro-life legislators that are concerned with abortions happening in our state, and we want to make sure that they're following the state law. And it appears to, at the appearance right now, there's some violations going on, and we want to get to the bottom of it.
It looked like the next step was there's some information the state has and the state's university has that they don't want to give to the state's lawmakers. And that looks like the next piece of this, where that's going to come to.
You know, this isn't the first time that we've taken on a department in state government, and they just don't want to give us the information. It's like prying teeth out to try to get this information, and we have to ask 20 questions to get a tidbit, which leads us down another path. And you know what? We're going to continue to do it to get the answers we need. Missourians deserve the truth.
It looks like right now, if you watch the hearings, there is some tie. I mean, the abortion clinic could not be in business right now without a tie to a hospital. The hospital looks like that's University of Missouri Hospital. If that comes out to be proven as the case, next session, what are the ramifications for the University of Missouri system? What are the ramifications for the budget of that system? Will it affect how much money they have? Will it affect some laws you put in place to govern what it could be and is seen by many as publicly funded abortions?
Yes, yes, and yes. Next year, as they go through the appropriation process, I can guarantee you that the University of Missouri is going to have to answer some questions. They get a large chunk of money from the state budget, and they're going to have to come into the Appropriations Committee prepared to answer questions, which is chaired by Senator Schaefer. But he's from Boone County in the Columbia area, so he's got a tie to the community as well. But they're going to have to come answer questions, and one of those questions is, did you recruit a doctor, and how are they tied to your university?
Let's get to the campaign. So running for Secretary of State seems like a natural fit for you, some of the bills you've carried. You've carried the photo ID law the last couple times.
Yep.
Is that something that'll be back in 2016?
Absolutely. We continue to get stonewalled. This is something that we've worked on for the last 10 years in the General Assembly. First passed the first bill in 2006. The Supreme Court threw it out. Came back in 2011, passed another, but we were going to amend the Constitution, and then we also passed a statutorial change, which allows the General Assembly to require a photo ID, and that we think that's the right step forward. But once again, the courts threw out the language that was in that referendum, so we're going to come back next year with another opportunity to get that done. Tell
me why this is important. I think some people think, well, I bet you a lot of folks think, of course, you have to have an ID to vote. You have to have an ID for many, many things in our current society. Walk me through why it's important to have this law and why you should have to have an ID to vote.
There's over 16 people that have been convicted in the state of Missouri of some type of voter fraud. That shows that people in the state of Missouri are trying to cheat elections. We have a state representative that was elected by one vote. His aunt and uncle come out a couple years afterwards and plead guilty basically in voting in the wrong area. That shows there's an intent to try to cheat on elections. Photo ID is just a verification that you are who you say you are when you come to the polls. That's why it's so important.
It seems to me if you argue it backwards, maybe it's wrong or even racist, as some folks have called photo ID, to force you to require IDs for other things in life. But I don't see the trend in society if you have to have less things, you have to have an ID for less things. Seems like you have to have an ID for more things, even use your debit card.
Right. Scott, in order to cash a check, you have to have a photo ID. In order to get welfare benefits, you have to have a photo ID. In order to get a federal cell phone, you have to have a photo ID. So how is this any different? It is just a verification at the polls that shows who you are. And I think it's common sense, and Missourians, I think, overwhelmingly will support it.
You know, one thing that's came up before is this photo ID costs 10 or 15 bucks to get. Is that not something, if the state's going to require it for a bunch of state interactions, is that not something the state could afford to provide for free if you need one?
Absolutely. The fact of the matter is, Kansas, when they passed this, they've only had 500 people actually apply for the photo ID.
So this coming session, you've introduced this bill several times. I assume you will again. Mm-hmm. Is paying for these IDs something you're willing to consider in your 2016 version of this bill?
Absolutely. You know, I'm willing to work with anybody to come up with a system to verify who a voter is. So I believe photo ID is the right way to go, but if somebody else can show me a better way, or they're willing to work to the table and say, okay, we'll use photo ID for the 5-6 million people that already have it, and the 200,000 people that don't have it, we can come up with a different system so that we can verify that they are who they say they are. I'm fine with working it through a process. I just want to know that when you come to vote, that you are who you say you are.
So looking at the campaign, how's it going? I mean, the fundraising seems to be going well. Tell us how the campaign's going on the ground.
It's excellent. I am enjoying it. Everywhere I go, I get support and get to know new people, and it's a lot of fun.
So your opponent in the primary is John Ashcroft. In the general, there's a kind of uniquely enough, a television personality from St. Louis who's running. How do you feel the race is, and where do you feel you are right now?
I think that we're doing what we need to be. I came out early to run against the Democrat incumbent. That Democrat incumbent chose not to run, and that's later on when the other two individuals got in the race. You know, this is about getting out and talking to the voters, and I seem to be doing well at that, and as I said, I'm gaining support everywhere I go.
So let's talk about veto session really quick. A couple issues coming up. The top one that people talk about is right to work. I know you've been a right to work supporter in the past. Break down why you support this, and I assume you're voting to override if it comes to you?
Absolutely. I signed the PQ letter. I voted for the bill when it passed the Senate, and I'm going to support the override if it gets to the Senate. It is imperative.
Why?
It is imperative for jobs in Missouri. If you look at the states surrounding Missouri that are right to work, they are growing at a faster pace, both union jobs and non-union jobs. So if we want to create an atmosphere to bring jobs to Missouri, right to work is the #1 thing we can do, and it's on the table. Let's get it done.
Is there the argument of some business owners is, you read this bill, and I'm sure you have, and it's a Class A misdemeanor to run your business like Schnucks runs theirs now. It seems like if you're trying to grow jobs, why are you focused not on helping the employers? Why are you trying to create a law they could break and go to jail?
You know, that was put in, I believe, in the Senate by a few people that oppose it, and as a kind of a poison pill. I think that
Seems pretty poisonous.
Right. I think we need to take care of that, and we can take care of that in January and make sure we clear up that language.
Question: do you believe you override this and put this into law?
I believe that we have an opportunity, and that it is possible to get it done. It is a narrow path, but it's going to come down to, I think, about 8 people in the House.
So, when did you were part of the first tax cut? When does that take effect?
2017 is the first year.
Do you see some of the angst? I mean, I understand there's conservatives that want a bigger government and regulations. Do you see the angst among some conservatives? There's been a majority for 15 years, and you'll do another regulation before anybody sees the tax cut.
Do I see angst?
Some frustration that they want a bigger tax cut. They want it now. They want you to focus on the tax cutting part of it.
I think that we passed is what we could get done at the time. I am for smaller government, and I believe the only way we get smaller government is by constraining government and not allowing it to grow. And so by cutting taxes, we can do that. And that's what this bill does. It's phased in over 5 years. It's what we could get done at the time.
And the tax cut helps everyone.
Absolutely. We bring the rate from 6% down to 5.5%, phased in over 5 years. Government revenue has to go up in order for us to hit the next year's trigger to get it done.
So in 2016, which could be your last year in the Senate, do you see a bigger tax? I mean, if you're going to add the regulation of right to work, do you see giving employers a tax cut sooner and bigger that helps employees and employers?
Yeah, I think that #1, we wouldn't be able to get that through the General Assembly and passed by signed by the governor or overridden. So I have been focusing in my committee, Ways and Means Committee, on trying to push back against Department of Revenue's overreach on Missouri businesses. This year we passed Senate Bill 18, which said if they come in and change the definition, they have to notify businesses. If they don't notify businesses, they can't go after back taxes. So I'm focused on protecting Missouri businesses against the overreach of government. That's kind of where we're focusing our time in the committee.
So it's coming on fall, and this reminds some folks of 9/11. I noticed the pin you have on your jacket. You've served in the service. Kind of maybe give our viewers a little bit of take on what 9/11 meant to you and a little bit of your service. You've actually fought in the wars that came from 9/11. Kind of walk us through what this time of year means to you.
So I have 23 years of service to the United States Army, most of the time flying Chinook helicopters, did spend a brief period of time over in Iraq defending our freedoms. You know, when we were attacked after 9/11, it was probably, I remember the day I was at work, and I remember the planes hitting the two towers and the devastation. We have to protect our own. And that's what service to the military means to me, is protecting U.S. citizens from harm. And we want to make sure that that never happens. And we can't just be defensive. We've got to go on the offense. We can't allow terrorists to attack us again. We can't sit back and wait for that to happen. We've got to go out and destroy the terrorists before they come on our soil and hurt innocent women and children.
Senator Kraus, thank you so much for joining us here on This Week in Missouri Politics.
Scott, thank you for having me.
And we'll leave you with this week's leading economic indicators in the state, and we'll be back with our opinion maker panel.
For more than a century, the St. Louis Carpenters Union has shaped our communities. Through trusted alliances, we deliver skilled professional craftspeople, while our business partners provide the kind of quality jobs that keep our economy humming. It's a blueprint that has worked since 1882. Turning Missouri into a right-to-work state stalls progress, wipes out jobs, and kills momentum. Right to work is wrong for everyone. Let's keep Missouri moving forward. Visit carpdc.org to learn more.
Welcome back to This Week in Missouri Politics on what, for me personally, is our most anticipated opinion maker panel we've ever had. We'll start with Tishaura Jones, the city treasurer of the city of St. Louis and former state representative. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
Former Senator Tim Green coming back on the show. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Former Speaker Tim Jones, his first appearance on This Week in Missouri Politics. We're very happy to have you.
Great to be here. Thanks for having me.
And the two men who makes this very exciting for me personally, Sean Nicholson, Progress Missouri. One of the reasons I even read Twitter is to read you and former Speaker Jones going back and forth. It's definitely made me participate more. So we'll start with you on the Sanctity of Life Committee.
Sure.
Biggest news in Jeff City this week is this committee was formed in the wake of the Planned Parenthood video issues and questions that arise from that. This week, the bombshell was it was pretty much admitted that it's the University of Missouri Hospital that's partnering with Planned Parenthood. Did you watch the testimony, and what was your take from it?
So I've watched all of the hearings so far on the Senate and the House side, and my take is that these hearings are almost entirely about Senator Kurt Schaefer trying to shore up his right flank in his Attorney General's primary. He ran as a moderate in 2008 and 2012 as supporting the status quo on reproductive rights, and now he's worried about a right flank challenge.
But if you really break it down, though, if there is the publicly funded university hospital partnering with Planned Parenthood, that's going to be a problem, right?
I think that to say that the university is promoting or wanting more abortions to happen is an accurate statement of what's happened. I think the university hospital provides health care, and if there's an emergency situation for medical abortions that are happening in Columbia, of course the university should be helping women in crisis.
Mr. Speaker, this happened on your watch when you were Speaker of the House of Representatives. What happens next session?
So I think that the university is going to really be under the gun. You know, the university comes hat in hand every year to the legislature asking for more and more money. I think they need to address some of their own internal issues on funding, to be honest, because tuition has skyrocketed over the last couple decades, but professor salaries have not kept pace with that. And it seems that they can't build new infrastructure fast enough. I was in a parking garage in Mizzou last year. It had heating and air conditioning in it. So I'm not sure what they're wasting money on there to begin with. However, on this issue, this is a serious issue, Scott. And as you know, it is a national issue. I was listening to Carly Fiorina on the way in here, and she said, you know, even mainstream Democrats are running as far as they can from Planned Parenthood because people do not believe taxpayer dollars should be used for this horror movie series that keeps adding to the mix every single week.
Senator Green, it's been a rocky few months for Mizzou. I mean, you go from buying golf courses to the issue with having one of their professors run to Chelsea Clinton's speech. The chancellor's been down twice this week getting grilled, and now this. What can Mizzou do to try to turn the corner and stop some of these issues while they're asking for a tax increase?
Right. I don't want to scare you, but I have to agree on one statement Speaker Jones has said is...
You're both named Tim, is that where you're...
Yes.
That's it, and that's where it is.
That's the one. But college tuition and the cost of education and higher education, that's affecting citizens throughout the state. 25 years ago, 65% of college tuition was paid, subsidized by the taxpayer. Today, it's about 35%. The debt of students have when they graduate is astronomical. And if they take FAFSA loans, they're at 7.2% interest, and they can't refinance. So one of the things the university needs to do, and always should have in the forefront, is affordable higher education.
Treasurer Jones, when you go from being on ESPN for having issues with keeping women on campus safe, to now you're in Breitbart for possibly cooperating on some level with an abortion clinic, it's not been a good few months. What do they need to do to turn this around, and can they?
Well, first, let me give you a statistic that Planned Parenthood, only the services that they provide, only 3% are abortions. 97% is health care. And speaking personally, I went to Planned Parenthood as a young woman in college because they saved my life. I had pre-cervical cancer cells on my cervix, and they saved my life. So if Planned Parenthood wasn't there, I wouldn't be sitting here before you today. So to say that just because the University of Missouri has a partnership with Planned Parenthood means that they're funding abortion is ludicrous. It's a stretch. What they're doing is providing women's health care, period. And if there's a situation where a woman needs an emergency abortion, or if her life is in danger, then of course it should be provided in a safe medical environment.
Great. Now, next topic, we'll talk about the minimum wage. Mr. Speaker, I know that you've got a dog in this fight, some thoughts on the issue. The city of St. Louis took a pretty bold step this week and went a long way towards paying their own minimum wage inside the state of Missouri. The backdrop is there's a law that was vetoed by the governor, possibly going to be overridden next month, that would make that definitely illegal. What happens if the city of St. Louis does, in fact, raise their own minimum wage? What happens with the court fights and the politics of it?
Well, thank goodness we have a common sense, pro-growth, pro-jobs, pro-business, pro-worker legislature, because they're going to correct this mess in September. And let me say this. When Tim Jones, Antonio French, and Jane Duker all agree on an issue, look out. There's a lightning strike incoming. And all three of us agree that it would be devastating for the city of St. Louis to raise its minimum wage and set itself further apart from the rest of the state. You know, I guess I should be in favor of the city doing this because it's the St. Louis County Jobs Plan, and all of the restaurants are going to move here. Look at Seattle. Seattle did this exact same thing a few months ago. The articles that just came out on major national mainstream media, that has been devastating for the city of Seattle. When you raise the minimum wage, guess what employers do? They erase the minimum wage jobs. They just don't exist anymore. Raising the minimum wage is not the way to grow our economy. It's bad for workers. It's bad for Missouri families.
Tishaura, you live in the city. You're an elected official there. What's the impact of this? What do you think about it? If you were on the board of aldermen, are you in favor of this?
I'm definitely in favor of this. People should be making a living wage, and minimum wage is not a living wage. And the reason why we had minimum wage is because FDR said it said it back in the 60s, saying that people should be paid at minimum a wage to be able to support their families. And minimum wage has not kept pace with inflation over the years. And now, if you are in favor of supporting businesses who want to pay people less, then go ahead and support those businesses. I don't care, but I'm going to support people who make a living wage and provide a living wage to their workers.
Sean Nicholson, walk me through this. You have a business right now on Hampton that you have half a dozen minimum wage employees.
Okay.
If this comes into effect, tell me why you don't just move over to Hanley here in St. Louis and come into the county and have your business there.
I think the best employers know that well-paid employees are folks that stick around, who are happier, and those are employees who then take that paycheck, their increased wages, and they go reinvest it in the community. So I think it's great for the economy for workers to have more jingle in their pocket. I think so much of what we've heard from very well-paid consultants and attorneys saying that the sky is falling, it ignores the reality of families who are in crisis trying to make ends meet on $300 a week.
Obviously, from an economic scale, would be impossible for most of us to live on that wage. From the bigger economic standpoint, are you confident that a larger minimum wage actually helps the overall economy in the city of St. Louis?
Absolutely. The study after study have looked at minimum wage increases at the state level, at the local level, and shown
This is a different thing, though. I mean, when you are taking a city inside a state, I mean, a state would have a bigger way to kind of smooth that out. In the city, it's a pretty laser focus. I mean, are you sure that the city raising the minimum wage this quickly and this much is going to be good for the economy?
Yeah, I think the city should be raising the minimum wage more. The compromise bill that was passed on Friday only raises the wage to $11 an hour by 2018. I think that's still not where we need to be.
Senator Green, you've been part of working on this issue a long time. Does this give an advantage to the county? And will the city be glad if this works out and they're able to keep this? Are they going to be happy they did?
I think to answer your first question, yes, it does give an advantage to the county. But I think the one thing that needs to be brought forth is why all of a sudden is this issue in the forefront the last week of August? And basically the Missouri legislature had a bill that dealt with whether a local community could regulate whether a store offers paper or plastic shopping bags. That's how this whole issue began. And then the latter part of the session, it was tacked on that local communities cannot dictate minimum wage rates. So when you pass a law in the legislature, it goes into effect, if it is signed by the governor, August 28th. Well, with the opportunity to override the governor's veto on this issue, the law, if it is overridden, would take effect August 28th. So that's why we're in this rush to come up with some type of legislation in the city of St. Louis to prevent them from acting upon it in the future.
Quick take, is it overridden? Does this stand?
Is this issue overridden? I can't take a
And
take on that issue.
2016, if all this ends up in a ballot initiative, do people like Chris Koster owe Francis Slay a debt of gratitude?
Well, I think there will be an issue dealing with minimum wage on the ballot.
Quick take, does this stand through the courts and the legislature?
I think the legislature overrides it. I know my former colleagues well enough to know that they will override it.
And if they override this and this becomes a ballot initiative, do Democrats throughout the state owe Francis Slay a thank you?
I don't know if they owe Francis Slay a thank you, but I think Democrats will definitely come together on minimum wage and try to pass it if it becomes a ballot issue.
At the end of the day, this is good politics for Democrats, right? And this is Slay's deal. I mean, we would not be talking about this without his work on this, correct?
Slay's been a part of it, but so have the workers who've been organizing
Sure.
and fighting for years to make this happen.
Mr. Speaker, at the end of the day, is the city of St. Louis, do you have a different minimum wage in the city of St. Louis than you do in the rest of the state?
I think ultimately the legislature will override. Mayor Slay, unfortunately, who I respect very much on many issues, except this one, is being pulled far to the left by the far left wing of the Democratic Party. It's a mistake for him to go there. A majority of Missourians have sent a supermajority conservative legislature to Jeff City, and they're going to straighten this mess out for more jobs, for better pay.
Well, I got you. Quick take. The other issue, the overriding was right to work. Does this regulation become law? Do they override it? Does it come up?
Tougher hill to climb. But I will say this. Many people said we would never, ever be at this point. When I started this debate 3 years ago, they said, you'll never get it out of the House. It got out of the House. Many said, it'll never get on the Senate floor. It did. The Senate will never move the PQ and move this to the governor's desk. It's there. We are one procedural vote away from making Missouri the 26th state in the nation for worker freedom. I think it's a great.
This happens, you have a little bit of pride, right? You're going to be in Jeff City watching?
It may not happen this year because I think it's going to be a tough vote to take, to actually make. But I believe the Speaker should have the vote. It's what we did on the tax cut. It's how we got the first tax cut and first tax relief for Missourians in nearly 100 years. This is a movement that is gaining steam across the nation. We have a presidential candidate who's running on that record right now, Scott Walker.
Senator Green, quick take, does this become law?
I think the organizations throughout the state have done a great job of educating their legislators. But on the one thing on right to work I want to bring up front is former Speaker Jones always says workers' freedom. You're taking away the rights of employers with this piece of legislation. You are criminalizing employers who sign union security clauses.
Actually, you're not, because
it states
if we didn't have all
blatantly
these
in the
bad
law.
federal laws in the first place, Tim, we wouldn't be at this point right now.
But you are making a criminal act for an employer who has had a union security clause for over 100
Just
years.
like every other state has done that's passed right to work. It's in every single statute. It's enforceable. Otherwise, the legislation's not enforceable.
But it is something that one of the things
You are making a criminal act for an employer
Correct, just
who
like the
signs
other 25 states.
that has a union security clause.
So what do you think?
You are making
just to
an
tie it up,
employer
Let worker freedom
a
come
criminal.
in, and you'll see jobs come back to Missouri, because the
You wanna
Chrysler plant is gone. The Fort Hazelwood plant is gone.
Speaker Jones, you want to see jobs come to Missouri? Let's deal with infrastructure. Let's deal with an educated workforce.
that's fine.
Let's deal with
And
energy.
while we love the sparks between the
Being
two
a union
Tims,
shop state has not helped us climb out of being
with Tim on
47th
Tim
in
violence, let's
GDP
get a
growth.
prediction here. What do you think? Is it going to pass?
I think there is a good chance it will not be overridden.
You have your finger on the pulse in Jeff City, I think. What happens? Does it pass?
Well, as close as the vote was when it got out of the House, I think that vote will be even closer. I don't think it's overridden.
Sean, does it pass?
No, 23 Republicans voted against it in the spring, and they're nowhere close to the votes for the override.
I did talk to a Republican today that Todd Richardson had went to personally, walked through. Todd has a different style. You don't see him hear the bombastic things, but I did talk to a legislator. He personally drove up to his district, walked him through, and he was flipping. It seemed to me like there was a little momentum there.
Yeah, I think Friday we saw Governor Norquist tweet out that, hey, we're still 7 or 8 votes short. So I don't think anyone, even supporters in D.C. who are pushing this legislation, are pretending they've got the votes right now.
Got a minute left. Let's talk about the Republican primary for a minute. Hillary Clinton seems to be having problems. I think that's something we can talk about again. But Republican primary, who you like?
No one.
No one. Who do you want to run against? Do you want to run against the Donald? That's the narrative.
I think Hillary wins no matter who out of the 18, 20 candidates come out of the Republican primary.
Did she send you an email to that effect, or you just?
No.
Sean Nicholson, who do you want to see? You want to see the Donald?
I think the Donald is pulling that entire field into a trap.
Senator Green, who do you want to see?
It's just great theater for me.
Indeed. Speaker Jones, you are plugged into these circles at a higher level than most people we have on. Who wins?
Most diverse, exciting Republican field we've ever seen. Carly Fiorina, Ben Carson, Ted Cruz. I think a governor is going to eventually pull this out, and they're going to have a woman or Hispanic as their running mate.
What about someone that signs the front of a paycheck, not the back?
That's true too,
What
and
about
that's
the
why
Donald?
Carly's doing so well.
We got to see your hashtags though before we go.
3 hashtags of the week: Pinata Trump, Worker Freedom, and Camaro Joe.
Did you just say Pinata Trump? Because
did.
I think what we have here for the first time is Pinata Trump right here on the show. So I think what we'll do is we'll tell you goodbye. We'll tell you goodbye to this week in Missouri politics. Signing off from Sean Nicholson and Pinata Trump. We'll see you next week.